What we're going to be doing next is to look at how we complete Part 2 of this land evaluation scorecard. Part 2 is dealing with the recommended land treatments that are needed for different land capability classes. We need to look at our capability class for land that we've just finished determining based upon the parameters we evaluated on the left-hand side of our card. We also need to look at our manual, because our manual goes through and describes these specific soil and or water conserving practices that we're being asked to determine whether or not it's applicable to use on this particular location. So if, for example, this is a cultivated land site, which is suitable for classes 1 through 4 land, capability class 1 through 4 land, and we're going to use this for a cultivated site, then we would be evaluating items number 1 through 6 on the first item there, vegetative management. Our vegetative management factor at the top of the right-hand column says use soil conserving and or soil improving crops every 4th or 5th year, 3rd or 4th year, and so on. What this is asking us to do is to determine how often we need to use a crop which will afford considerable protection to that soil against water erosion, and or in some cases it could be wind erosion, but the more likely case will be water erosion. If we look at our definitions on page 22 of the manual, under vegetative treatment, it says for cropland use, class 1 through 4 land, use soil conserving crops or soil improving crops every 4th or 5th year. Well, this would be the least restrictive type of lands, or class 1 or 2 land. Every 3rd or 4th year would be applicable on class 3 land, and then every other year, or every 2nd year, would be on class 4 land. Now, occasionally we will have a site where we are above class 4 in capability classification, and yet this is still being utilized for cultivated cropping purposes. And I think many of us have seen this. Some of the steeper country here in eastern Washington, also known as the Palouse region, we have many slopes out there that are high enough, up in the 40% range, that it puts it in a higher land capability class like class 6. However, if we're using this for cultivated cropping, we need to understand that we are going to need to use those soil improving or soil conserving crops on that site every year. So if we're above class 4 land and we are cultivated cropping, that's when we would use the soil conserving or soil improving crops every year. So basically we're going to check either item number 1, 2, 3, or 4 on a cultivated land site, but only one of those factors. So they're mutually exclusive of each other. You would never check more than one of the items 1 through 4 on this vegetative management portion of the scorecard. Once we've determined the land capability class and checked the appropriate item 1, 2, 3, or 4, we then look at items number 5 and 6. Items number 5 and 6 are used on all cultivated land sites. What they're telling us is that we do not burn the crop residue, and we use good residue management, meaning minimum tillage or no-till practices. We need to understand that this exercise is being put together by the Washington Association of Conservation Districts, and best management practices tell us that we would not burn that residue. I do know, however, as I'm sure many of you do, that burning of crop residues is a practice that is employed at times by agriculturalists or farmers in different parts of the country. And I don't think that it's our purpose at this point in time to sit here and discuss the pros and cons of burning of that residue. There are both advantages and disadvantages to this. But since this is a soil conservation exercise, soil and water conservation sponsored exercise, we do check items number 5 and 6 with one of the 4 above that on cultivated land sites. Items number 7, 8, 9, and 10 are employed or possibly used on grazing, pasture, or grassland types of sites. So if our intended use of the site is for grazing, managed pasture, rangeland, those types of purposes, then items number 7, 8, 9, and 10 would be employed. We don't always check all of these factors. For example, item number 7 says establish a recommended grass. Well, if the site that we're evaluating has a good stand of grass on it, perennial grass, we would not check item number 7. But items number 8, proper pasture and range management, number 9, protect from burning, and number 10, control grazing, would be checked on these sites even if we didn't need to establish the grass. So item number 7, we need to evaluate the current grass that is there, determine whether or not it would be advantageous to replant that. If it's a good stand of grass, we would not check item number 7. If it's a poor stand of grass or none exists at this time, we would check item number 7 on our land evaluation card. So 7 is yes or no depending on what's there at the present time, and then 8, 9, and 10 are pretty much automatics for the grazable pasture, rangeland types of sites. Items number 11 and 12 apply or could apply if we're going to utilize this site for woodlot or timber production. So items 11 and 12, plant recommended trees and harvest trees selectively, would apply on woodlot or timber production sites. So if the desired use of that is a woodlot or timber production, then items 11 and 12 would be checked. Item number 13 is kind of a catch-all category, and what I mean by that is that on item number 13, if none of those factors above apply, let's say we're evaluating a site that is only applicable for wildlife or recreational purposes. This would be very steep land, typically class 8, perhaps class 7 land. Then that item number 13 would be checked if none of the items above, number 1 through 12, were applicable. So it's not very often we would check item number 13, only on class 8 land where the only use that can be made of that site is to use it for wildlife or recreation purposes. So those are the vegetative management criteria that we have to evaluate. Just as a way of a brief review, items 1 through 6 are used on cultivated sites. 1 through 4, we check one of them, and 5 and 6 are pretty much automatic. Items number 7, 8, 9, and 10 are used on grazing land or rangeland. 7, we have to evaluate whether we check it or not based on current vegetation. 8, 9, and 10 would be checked. And then 11 and 12 are used where we desire woodlot or timber production. Item number 13 is only used on class 8 land.